Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's video on Bank Holiday Monday, so at the end of the Christmas and New Year holiday. Now I think getting back to normal of course tomorrow, although I think it is one more bank holiday for Scotland tomorrow, but the rest of the country I think will be getting back to normal. So thanks for tuning in on your Bank Holiday Monday, the last one of the Christmas and New Year period. We're going to have a look at weather next week to 10 days. I think unusual about today's video, nothing special. So you can have a look at weather next week to 10 days. And I'll have detail on the big freeze that's heading in to most parts of Europe. We're not going to get this in the British Isles. So if you I'd like to get a bit upset because we aren't in the severely cold weather that's going to be engulfing most of Europe. I'd suggest actually you turn off because it might be a bit painful to watch because there really is going to be some very, very cold conditions coming up for most parts of Europe and the risk of snow in places as well. And then we'll have a look at weather next week to 10 days in the United Kingdom. The suggestions are still there as we're running into the middle part of January, but we might turn things a bit colder from the north. But I'd take it with a pinch of salt. The models have been performing quite dismally over the past couple of weeks in terms of trying to bring cold weather to us. And, well, we know it's gone terribly wrong this week. So just take anything from around 5 days out with a pinch of salt. Before I get on with all of that, though, just say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse through widgets and click through links. If there's any articles that you're interested in, you help us pay for our website. Thanks very much for doing that. There's also video ads for those pages, which own content when you watch them. They close back up again. And it does help to pay for gas weather. So these are the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for next week to 10 days. It's going to be taking us to around the 12th of January. You've got the ECWF here on the top, and the GFS, which I'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, measurements feet is an area in the absolute high pressure, low pressure, being trapped by jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. So this is our cold trough that's going to be bringing a very severe freeze up to most parts of Europe in the week to 10 day period, so into second week of January. That's still there over on the eastern and southeastern side of Europe, the jet stream doing something like that as well. That will be bringing severely cold weather to eastern parts of Europe and down into the southeast as well. If you're in the Balkans, you're really going to be freezing later on this week, and that continues up to a week to 10 days away. It'll extend down into Turkey, Greece and Italy as well. Now, we are being governed by this ridge that's out into the Atlantic, so it's a displaced Azores high, really, and to get proper cold weather, you need to get this shoved down towards Bermuda, while it's sitting there around to the southwest of the UK, and particularly clinging on like a limpet to Spain and Portugal. There's no chance of any sustained cold conditions, in my view. So the jet stream with that is going something like that, bringing fairly mild air around the top of the ridge into Western Europe, and then, of course, it pushes up northwards and then finally plunges southwards into eastern and southeastern parts of Europe, rather like that. That's the GFS. The ECWF is, that was the ECWF, I should say. This is the GFS, and it's very similar. The ridge is out west. It's displaced a little bit further into the central Atlantic, so it does allow potential. As I said, the GFS is coming up with the idea that we might get a little bit of a northerly flow through towards the middle part of January, which might be a bit colder. Then that happens because the ridge is out in the central part of the Atlantic. It's finally getting the heights out of Spain and Portugal, where they've been clinging on for weeks on end. Finally begin to pull those heights out of Spain and Portugal, but I'm a bit dubious about it, really. The GFS has been acting abysmally over the past couple of weeks. Anyway, that's the height anomaly for 7 to 10 days. High pressure in the central Atlantic. There's the cold trough extending through the southeast of Europe. That's been pushing increasingly in towards the southeast of Europe, probably going more towards the Middle East, actually, so we could be hearing about snow in places in the Middle East that are likely to get snow, so perhaps Israel could get some snow from that cold trough. Whether that would extend further in towards the Middle East, I'm not sure, but don't be surprised if you hear about surprise snowfalls in places that are normally extraordinarily hot, or we regard them as extraordinarily hot. You can get snow in the Middle East. I suspect we might be seeing something like that in the next week, 10 days, while we remain close to that mild Atlantic ridge. So these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next 2 weeks. The red line here is a 30-year temperature average. We're a bit cold on average now. Still got the legacy of yesterday's little northerly plunge. And actually, we are going to just about get into this really severely cold air around Wednesday into Thursday. That little plunge in the temperature there, a little drop in the temperature, I should say. It's not a plunge, but a little drop in the temperature there. That's just that little, just a little taster of what will be going on across many parts of Europe at that time. But you see, that only lasts a few hours, and then we're off and running with milder weather again into the end of the week and the weekend. And then beyond that, well, there is a suggestion to turn things a little bit cooler. As I say, we're going a bit below the 30-year temperature average in the extended part of the GFS. That's happening through a cold polar maritime airstream coming down from sort of Greenland, Iceland. It's plausible, I suppose, with the setup that we've got this year, but it certainly won't be anything out of the ordinary. There are a few cold outlier members there, but I think basically the idea is to be fairly mild at the end of the week and into the weekend, while most of Europe is engulfed in the big freeze. And then next week, probably pushing the Atlantic through a little bit more. And that might bring in some colder, or probably best say cooler air from the northern Atlantic. But nothing particularly exciting showing up there. These are the temperature anomalies then for the next week. This is taking us from the 2nd through 10th of January. Notice the vast majority of Europe is locked into the freezer, particularly cold down into the Balkans, into southeastern Europe. Look how cold it is around Greece and going over towards Turkey. Also, France is looking pretty cold, Germany as well, Spain and Portugal both looking cold also. It's really just Ireland and the UK and probably Sweden that looks a little bit milder than average. Denmark too coming out a little bit milder than average. So the far northwest of Europe is mild. Most places look very cold. We're not alone in having this sort of setup, because big temperature differential across America as well. So in the northwest of America, in the Pacific Northwest, there it is very cold, severely cold. Most parts of America, though, actually not overly cold, a little bit cooler than average through the Midwest than into the east. But I don't think we can blame America for this failed cold weather that we're having in the UK. A lot of times there is the view that if it's very cold in America, it puts the mockers on getting cold weather in the UK, because it fires up the jet stream very often and brings intense storms, areas of low pressure off the Atlantic. That's not the case with this one. We can't blame a big freeze in America for the freeze in the UK going wrong. And quite warm actually down in the southwest of America. They're coming out milder than average. It's really in the northwest, around the Pacific Northwest, that we've got those very cold temperature anomalies. Precipitation anomalies closer to home, when it's looking drier than average in the west, as it has been for many weeks now. So really, this started back in the summer, that we had a lot of dry weather in the latter part of the summer. The summer started off quite wet in June, but it rapidly dried through particularly August into September, very dry conditions. And this is really carried on into the winter. So as I was saying yesterday, if this goes on many more months and we get a hot summer, we are going to have to think about a drought this year, I think, because we haven't had a prolonged wet spell now really since June. So just going to have to see how much longer this is going on for. But I won't be ruling out the chance of the drought. It will depend if we sort of make up the rainfall during the late winter and spring. Spring's normally quite dry. So I think it's fairly remote that we will make up the rainfall during the spring. We might have something unusual happen, but spring tends to be dry. And then, of course, we've got to have a hot summer as well to have a drought, and that's a big unknown as well. So there's a lot of steps to go through before we are in a drought, but certainly we are trending very much on the drier side and have been for several months. So we continue in the west of Europe, looking very dry. Central, east and southeast areas where we've got that cold trough through, so there the temperature anomalies are coming out, precipitation anomalies I should say, are coming out above average. Most of that will be snow, of course, into the east and the southeast of Europe. This is the GFS for Thursday then. So we're under this ridge, and it's on the eastern side of the ridge that we've got this very cold big freeze taking place across most parts of Europe. So the UK and France more or less under the ridge, and it's to the east where we're pulling down that air from Siberia. There's the upper air temperatures then, showing that most of Europe is locked into the freezer on Thursday. It's really from Germany eastwards and then up towards Russia that have got the coldest of the temperature. It's also plunging down into southern and southeastern Europe. Spain and Portugal, fairly mild, but it's under a ridge, so because it's continental climate, it's a little bit cooler there, but you're not in the Siberian air. And then for Ireland and the UK, where we're just on the periphery of that cold plunge, it's -5 iceberg is through East Anglia, but actually it's these milder temperatures pushing in from the Atlantic that we've got to think about, and that's how things are looking on Friday when we are back within the mild Atlantic air there through the UK and Ireland. That just that brief taste of the big freeze lasts a few hours on Thursday and then it's gone. Through most eastern parts of Europe, firmly locked into freeze, and notice how cold it is across Italy. That's very unusual to see Italy more or less completely through the -10 isotherm, and the -5 isotherm is getting into Corsica and Sardinia in the central part of the Mediterranean. So that's very cold for the central and eastern part of the Med, and then going over towards the Balkans, over the Adriatic, of course, into the Balkans. They're deadly cold, I would say, with temperatures going down probably to -20 in some places. So unfortunately, there's bound to be some fatalities with this cold weather that's coming up for eastern and southeastern parts of Europe. There, the dew points. Look at that, how cold it is across virtually the whole of Europe. It's just really Ireland and the UK and probably Norway and Sweden that's not within that severely cold air. Most places look very, very cold indeed. And notice again how cold it is through Italy, going down into or over the Adriatic and then down into the southeast of Europe. Very severely cold. These are the temperatures on Friday. These are the maximum temperatures for Friday. So Germany is around -2 to -8 degrees. Poland is between -6 to -10 degrees maximum. Ukraine, further east of that, we're around -12 to what looks like -17 degrees through the Ukraine. Extremely cold conditions in the east of Europe, and these extend down into Med as well. So most of Italy is sub-zero. Of course, it won't be around the coast, but inland and in mountainous regions, quite a mountainous country, of course, Italy, you're sub-zero there. The Balkans, extremely cold again, with some places not seeing maximums above around -10 to -14 degrees. Very, very cold conditions coming up for the east and southeast. I say deadly cold, really. In the northwest of Europe, so France looks quite cold at around 3 or 4 degrees. The UK on Friday is around 7 or 8 degrees in the south, around 9 or 10 in the north. And Ireland has the dizzy heights of 12 or 13 degrees, very mild. Their minimum temperatures over Friday night into Saturday, again, deadly cold conditions. Some parts of Germany are going down to -10. Further east, we're going down to around -12, -13 through Poland, and then east of that towards Ukraine, we're going down towards -20 or lower, probably down to -25 in some eastern parts of Europe. These conditions extend down into the southeast as well. That's where the Balkans are, and we're going down below -20 there. Many parts of Italy going down as low as -9 or -10. Again, that's particularly for mountainous regions where we're close to the coast. It won't be as cold as that. But even the islands of Corsica and Sardinia are being signalled to go down to -3. That's right in the central part of the Mediterranean. Very unusual cold conditions there. For the UK and Ireland, so minimum temperatures for Ireland of around 10 degrees, for the UK of around 5 degrees, and Denmark also pretty mild at around 2 degrees minimum there on Friday night and Saturday morning. So if you are in the east of Europe, I know we do have some people watching in the east of Europe, I'd suggest that you do take care with this cold weather because it does look very extreme. And then go through into Friday with the GFS. We've got this really cold air extending through the east of Europe. Out to the west, we're close to this ridge, and mild air is coming in around the top as we already established, and that continues into the weekend. The freeze will ease across eastern parts of Europe a little bit over the weekend, but it'll still be very cold down into the southeast of Europe. It looks like the cold's beginning to regather a little bit over towards western Russia, and also getting in towards parts of Finland, Estonia, Latvia, places like that also might be starting to get colder again by sunny. But for the west of Europe, we're close to this ridge, under the high pressure of balmy air is coming in from off the Atlantic Ocean. These are our temperatures on Sunday, where most parts of the UK and Ireland are going to be up to around 12 or 30 degrees. Notice the severest of the cold air is easing in the east and the southeast of Europe, but we are still talking about being several degrees below freezing by day and night in eastern parts of Europe. But over the weekend, I think conditions in terms of this big freeze will start to ease a little bit, but still staying very cold. And then going beyond that into the week to 10 days, this is Monday, 9th of January, a week away. We're beginning to establish more of a westerly flow then, starting to bring the Atlantic back in. Have a little bit of a northerly interlude there on Tuesday. That's a little bit cold. It might bring some wintry showers to Scotland. Notice quite cold again across northeastern parts of Europe, and maybe the hint of a Scandinavian high trying to get going, but that's blown away very quickly by this intense storm that runs in across Iceland on Wednesday the 11th. The winds are back in from the west, pretty mild for Western Europe. And then beyond that, so we have this low pressure around Iceland. The wind goes more northwesterly, so that's bringing in some slightly colder air from Greenland. It is modified greatly by the Atlantic. There's a long sea track, but it might bring some snow showers to Scotland and some wintry showers elsewhere. That shows relatively cold air through the UK with those west to northwesterly winds, but normally these get moderated actually in this kind of pattern, and by the time we get to it, we'll probably just have the -5 ice firm somewhere around Shetland and the Outer Hebrides, with most other areas quite mild. And then we go beyond that and we stay westerly, hints at the turn of the wind into the north as we get up towards the middle of January. I don't think we should take that overly seriously because the GFS has been coming up with these sort of phantom northerlies that never get within the reliable time frame. So up to mid-January, yes, it does suggest we're going to turn colder with the wind in from the north, but I'd sort of want to see that coming much, much closer to the time frame and being supported by other models before I took it at all seriously. And then we have the ECMWF for Friday, so very similar story. You've got all this severely cold air through central, east and southeast parts of Europe. The mild air is coming around the top of the ridge in towards the UK and Ireland. That sets us up for a very mild weekend. Be a lot of cloud around over the weekend, I think, but those temperatures are really going to be going up in towards double figures. And if you've got anything to do in the garden, it's going to be a fairly decent weekend for getting out and about. If you want to have a walk, it'll be okay. Temperature's going to be nice and mild with a lot of cloud and fairly quiet conditions. Into next week, and again, same idea, but we bring the Atlantic back, so it turns a little bit more unsettled early next week with some rain around. A brief little bit of a northerly there on Wednesday the 11th on the backside of this area of low pressure that's going in towards Scandinavia, but that doesn't rain very long, and as we go up towards day 10, it looks like we're probably starting to re-establish a southwesterly flow. Again, we have got a bit of a colder ridge there on day 10, Thursday the 12th of January, but I think this area of low pressure that is out to the west will probably flatten this ridge off fairly quickly and just bring the winds back in from the Atlantic. Notice another cold plunge is going down into eastern parts of Europe. They may come out with a record cold winter for some parts of eastern and southeastern Europe. So, I mean, regardless of whether this winter forecast was for a little bit colder than average, and a lot of things we looked at were suggesting a pretty cold European winter. And for some parts of Europe, I think we are going to have a cold winter, definitely having a very cold winter in the southeast. And as I say, it wouldn't be that surprised if it finishes up being record-breakingly cold for some southeastern parts of Europe. It's just so happens that it's all set up so that in the northwest of Europe, we are on the mild side of the blocking and of the ridging. It might shift that, and we might find the blocks and the troughs and the ridges realigning at any point over the next few weeks. And if we do, then we will come into colder conditions, but at the moment there's no sign of it. Up to day 10, looks like we're remaining on the milder side of the troughs and the ridges. So that's how it's looking. Big freeze coming up for many east and southeast parts of Europe. Do take care if you're watching from the east and the southeast of Europe. In the north and west, we will just get into that freeze for a few hours on Wednesday and Thursday. Then it's gone, and we're into the Atlantic and mild conditions for the weekend. Next week, possibly a little bit cooler from the northern Atlantic. Right, that's all for now. Thanks for watching.